Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Checkpoint. We continue informing you. This time round, we want to focus on a special feature coming your way, highlighting the role of women in the Gen Z protests. Now, 1 year ago, Kenya witnessed a protest like no other. The streets were filled with organic crowds of Kenyans protesting against the finance bill. Tonight, we take you into the heart of the movement, zooming in on the role of women in the Gen Z protests. What role did they play and why were they so fearless? Our special features reporter, Agutu Rosa, with more.
As chants rose, tear gas filled the air on the streets of Nairobi and different parts of the country. It was a protest like no other. Women of different ages were out there fighting. The fight was not just against the finance bill and taxes. It was for their dignity, fear, and years of pent-up anger. It was a fight to be heard. Women had decided to no longer be victims of bad policy, and so mobilization was done. Social media played a big role. X hashtags, TikTok reels, WhatsApp statuses, Facebook posts and Instagram stories, reels and Instagram lives. Those platforms were not only used for mobilization, but to explain in simple terms the jargons that were on the finance bill. My name is Agutu Rosa, and this is the story of women on the front line. The June 2024 demonstrations were different. Young people came out in large numbers from different demographics. Some walked, some used public transport, while others used private means. Some leaders condescending words aggravating the anger.
Wale wengi unaona wakiandamana Nairobi, wameshika simu ya iPhone, wanajiita Gen Z. Wanafika kwa maandamano na Uber. Wanatoka maandamano, wanaingia KFC kukula kuku na minofu.
Yet, some stood by the angry population. We meet activist Njeri Mwangi at her home, who was part of the protest.
It felt like the tide rose with everything that we've been fighting for. And finally, everyone could see and could feel the need. And people rose to it to fight for themselves. While people may say, you know, I don't know what different people will say, but it felt like we were for once united in this struggle and everybody was there for themselves and they were fighting for their future.
Women in Kenya had been on the streets for months, pushing for the end of rising cases of femicide. Hence, the finance bill issue found a seasoned group of protesters fueled by the quest for survival.
It gave more women more courage to come out because also how that finance bill was going to affect them. When you think about the tax on pads, on diapers, the things that women have no choice over. I don't have a choice on when I'll have my period or if I'll have my period this month.
Being arrested during such protests is nothing new in Kenya. However, it sparks a feeling for those who find themselves on the wrong side of real or imagined law.
The moment you're thrown into the back of that Mariamu, I think everything changes. You are afraid you're on your own. You don't know when you'll get out. You don't know where you will be taken. You don't know if there's a dog's beating waiting for you. You don't know. Everything just is in the air and you're all alone. Even if you're with others, there's just a moment of loneliness that, oh my God. You think about your family, you think about your parents and the worry and that who will tell them and what will they feel. And you want to be reassuring but it's all scary.
Anita Barasa is a 19-year-old activist. She became famous when she shared a video asking veteran politician Raila Odinga to stay at home and let the new generation represent him.
Agombo, this is a message to you. Usitoke, don't come. Agombo, please stay at home. We saw your efforts, okay? We saw everything that you did for Kenya. Now let us. We miss you, but Agombo, please don't even come outside. Don't come outside. Tunatoka on your behalf, okay?
Agombo has always been my mentor at home where I'm from. He's always the light at the end of the tunnel. So I just had to tell him that his time for awakening the crowd had passed, for us to get up Sasino to Mebaki. So we had to do our job, and I had to say something because no one was saying anything. So yeah. First of all, the economy will not crash when I just got to my good ages. So I had to be part of it actively, because if you're not part of politics actively, it'll you'll get entangled into it. So you just have to do something and get into it. And my friends were really a great source of support. They're also politically active, and yeah. Plus my roots, my dad is also very woke. First of all, before all these demos happened, I was a social media creator. So I had to bring whatever is happening in the country to my safe space, which was TikTok. And for my people who follow me there, they had to, I like to think that my community thinks just like me. So I had to bring it up on social media to push the agenda and maybe see if people are gonna come out more, because you can't wait on the news, and probably most youth don't watch the news anyway, so yeah.
However, there are dangers that come with such actions, especially for women.
From a woman's point of view, being robbed, men being men, plus all those the fumes that were going around everywhere. I personally have chest problems, but my chest problems won't stand in the way of my future.
I think as a Kenyan woman, we face risks every day. Where we go, what time we get there, how we get there, what we wear, who we go with, you will always ask yourself, will I be safe? Depending on the option that you pick, right? And so protests are no different, because there's the added risk of what more could happen to you.
Women in Kenya have been on the forefront of fighting for human rights and other issues. However, very few are appreciated.
I think during the protests, because we're, as a people, having more conversations around politics and governance, you definitely start to see sexism and misogyny rear its head. I wouldn't go into how the treatment of women versus men was during the protests, because I saw a lot of camaraderie, but that was my experience. But then if you look at digital platforms, and when people are calling out, as they rightly should, different members of parliament who happen to be men, one of the number one insults you'll see is that they'll tell them they're women, or they will Photoshop their photos onto a woman's body, as though to say being a woman is an insult, or the greatest insult you can tell a man. I think Kenyan women don't get their flowers for being at the forefront of all revolutions, not just June 2024. And women show up in different capacities. There are strong ones who are on the front line and are running and throwing back tear gas as well. And then we have mothers camping at police stations trying to demand for justice when it comes to how their sons were treated.
For women, the journey to the top has come a long way.
There were generations where women could not open bank accounts without a man. They couldn't own land without a man. Obviously, we see different versions of that oppression to date, but there was a time where a woman had to be rounded off to a man for basic survival. And so when I look at older generations of women from that lens, I kind of give them grace.
Mimi hata tafadhali muniue muashe watoto. The young generation. Yeah, tafadhali mtuue sisi wase. Mumetuashia nani? Sasa huyo kijana amekufa hapo. Mama yake amewashwa na nani? Demonstration ya watoto wetu, it was peaceful. Awache watoto wetu wa demonstrate na wasikize. Finance bill hakuna kitu inamaanisha kwa hii nchi. Sio hiyo kubwa kuliko sisi ama sio kubwa kuliko wazazi ama watoto.
In 2014, women led a protest with the hashtag #MyDressMyChoice after a woman was undressed at a bus stage by a group of men who claimed she was not dressed decently. In 2018, Kenyan women also demonstrated after a woman who was breastfeeding at a restaurant was asked to cover up or breastfeed in the bathroom. During the protest, women came out breastfeeding their children. The incident sparked a conversation about the right to breastfeed in public places and the need for facilities to accommodate mothers. In 1999, the late Nobel laureate Wangari Maathai was brutally beaten by police officers for protesting plans to build a golf course on the public land within Karura Forest. The attack sparked international outrage and led to a government ban on further public land allocation. She had previously led mothers of political prisoners in Kenya in a vigil and hunger strike at Uhuru Park to demand the release of their sons and other political prisoners in 1992. During the fight for independence, some women were in the forest with men, braving the cold nights and attacks from the colonialists and their sympathizers. One of those women was Field Marshal Muthoni wa Kirima. Women would pretend to do their daily chores, but would strategically place food, weapons, medicine, and clothes in places where the Mau Mau would pick. One of those women is Anna Wamoyo Kabobi, alias Cindereri. Her role was to work in white settlers' homes. Then, she would smuggle guns for Mau Mau fighters. She perfected the art so much that they needed a railway wagon to transport the guns she had accumulated. This earned her the nickname Cindereri. Other outstanding women were Njoki Washere. Together with other women, she tricked and stole guns from home guards in a camp where thousands of Mau Mau fighters were detained. Rebecca Njeri Kari was the leader of the women's wing of Mau Mau. Wamboi Waiyaki, who would later become Wamboi Otieno, had a network of women spies who gathered information for freedom fighters. Agiriama leader Mnyanzi wa Menza, famously known as Mekatilili wa Menza, led her people against the colonial administrators. Mekatilili was exiled to Kisii in Nyanza province. However, history has it that she trekked over 1,000 kilometers back home to Giriama. She would later be arrested and sent to a prison in Kismayu, Somalia, where she escaped and returned home. She died in 1924 and was buried in Bungale in Magarini constituency, Malindi district. Anti-finance bill protests were covered by all mainstream media across the country and internationally. Journalists were on the front line, giving the audience a front row seat of what was happening on the streets. However, part of this work came with its fair share of trauma. Marianne Muganda is a reporter at the Standard Media Group. She had covered several protests before. However, this one was different. As a health reporter, she was deployed to the first aid sports.
When I left the office, I was more than psyched. Like, oh, I am a Gen Z going to cover the protest, and then me in my white, black t-shirt, sweatpants, and I was like so excited that I'm going to be part of something. But even though our editors reminded us that I ought to be a journalist first, so I was eager and looking forward to it until I got there. At first, it was just okay. People were marching, people were chanting, people were singing. As a health journalist, for me, I was sent on the section of Jamia Mosque where the doctors and the first aiders were. So I had to be there with them. It get me to check our main aim, our main job that particular day was to check the injured, how many, is there any person who has passed away, how fatal are the injuries, the ambulances coming in, how many people they are taking in and out, you see, and the bullet. Actually, we were supposed to, mostly because we knew how this country can get, we were recording bullet fatalities. As time went by, things were just getting ugly and uglier because police were seeing that this place, people are converging to be treated, to be done for first aids, to be taken care of, given water, those who are fainting and all. And the next minute, police themselves are also dispersing. Sleeping wasn't part of it. You just have to stay awake and be like, but for the rest of the days to come, I didn't want to come near anything to covering protest. I told myself I'm not going to.
She adopted a new way of coping.
We are now just listening to stories of parents whose children were killed during that particular time. Now we have to listen to their stories because we have a choice. We have to report and write about their emotions. But you as a person, you have to be there and listen in and be like, and just offer what you can, which is sympathy. Would I want to cover something like that again? I'm not so sure. No, I don't think so. Will I want to be on the sidelines when it comes to it? Yes. But cover it? No. I think I've not still yet grown a tough skin for something like that. Maybe doctors' protest where it's at least somehow neutral and peaceful. That one I would. But this one? No.
Chebet Birir is also a reporter at the Standard Media Group. While she did not cover the protests, she did cover the burial of the first victim of the deadly demonstrations, Rex Masai.
More pressure continues to mount on President William Ruto and his administration to resign so that justice for Rex and other victims of police brutality can prevail. Chebet Birir, KTN News in Machakos County. And I remember when I was assigned that story, I felt some sort of pain because you can imagine the pain, the amount of pain the parents went through, knowing that your son was killed. He was not sick. And so even when I reached there at the venue of the burial, it was a somber mood, totally unusual somber mood. And I remember there was also chaos because of protesters. There was a lot of protesting around the burial site and outside the school where the burial was happening, and people were demanding for justice. I remember the speeches of the parents. The mother was so bitter, and I remember she actually said that whoever killed Rex should not have peace, should not ever have peace. So you can imagine the amount of bitterness when your child is killed. And being a mother myself, I actually felt that pain.
As a journalist, how did you cope?
Me as a journalist, they say you separate yourself from the story. But it was not easy for me to separate myself from the story. I'm also a Kenyan. And of course, I feel it when there is brutality meted on my fellow Kenyans. And so I felt bad. Let me just summarize it that way. I felt bad covering the story, seeing the parents sad, seeing the siblings crying.
The story took a toll on Chebet because prior to the burial, she had covered two somber stories.
One was the Kware murders. There was also, remember the Kware murders where the women's bodies were dismembered. And then there's also Rex. So covering subsequent death stories took a toll on me. And I actually remember I had to see a counseling psychologist to be able to overcome the trauma and just heal and be able to come back to work.
Apart from psychological trauma, there are some who went through physical trauma. A reporter from MediaMax, Catherine Kariuki, was shot with rubber bullets across her left thigh as she covered the anti-government protests in Nakuru County.
It was such a traumatic incident where at around 3 p.m. that's where I met this unfortunate incident where I was shot by a police officer. But fortunately, I was surrounded by my colleagues who helped me to rush me to one of the hospital facilities within Nakuru CPD for first aid, and later I was taken to Nakuru PGH Annex where I was operated on, and the 3 bullets were dodged out of my body. My physical mobility is not as it used to be. You can actually tell that I have had some injury, but that has not triggered me from to do my day-to-day activities. Now, when it comes to my mental health, it's a challenge almost 1 year down the line, because it's a process, and the fact that I'm still in the surrounding that incident happened. It takes longer to accept the reality, but I'm trying my level best, still going through my sessions with my psychologist, and I believe it's one step at a time, and eventually I'll get there. Not gotten my justice yet, but as per now, we've started a journey with my lawyer, and I believe and I trust that it is going to get me to my path through the justice.
Now, what can we do to cope with PTSD? Number 1, mindfulness. It's very easy to get carried away in the moments. It's very easy to get stuck in those seasons where the traumatic event happened, and because of the flashbacks and the disruptive thoughts that come about, it's quite hard at the moment to be in the present. But I want to ask you to allow yourself to feel the feelings as they come. The feelings of anger, the feelings of frustration, the feelings of disappointment, the feelings of regret, all those feelings, you need to feel them, because burying them under the sand or pretending that they are not there will not help in the healing process. Seek therapy services. This is one of the things that will help you process the emotions, because you'll be dealing with a licensed therapist who will be able to look at the events as they happened, at the trigger moments, and help you with the appropriate treatment plans for you to get to the next chapter of your life.
Evans Omolo, provost of All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi, walked out during the protests and dissuaded the officers from throwing tear gas into the church compound, which was also used as a first aid center. Provost believes that women did a commendable job during the protest.
Women played a critical role. If you watch the footages, for the very first time in my life, I've seen women, younger ladies, 23, 24, and under 30, in the front line of protests, pushing for what is right. So yes, women played a critical role. But I think women can do more if they got more support. Unfortunately, we do not give them requisite support to enable them play that critical role. And I'd want to ask the churches to allow women more into leadership and even in advocacy, because most of the things that we talk about that inconvenience us, largely they are about women and children, yet it's men who are in the front line. Why can't we then allow more women to play that critical role in terms of agitation?
Michael Oyaro, a human rights lawyer, talks about the legal protections.
Under the Constitution of Kenya, we have the right to life, that's Article 26. We have equality and freedom from discrimination, that's Article 27. We have dignity, Article 28. We have freedom and security of the person, Article 29. We have right to a fair trial, that's Article 50, and the rights of an accused person, that's Article 49. these all apply equally to men as they apply to women. So any woman who feels they have been targeted, they have been mishandled, they have been handled in a way by the police that is contrary to the law or contravenes the right, can approach the High Court under Article 22. The High Court gets the powers under Article 23 to seek interpretation and get redress of their rights. And sometimes the court might order, might give a compensation, an injunction against the parties, amongst other remedies provided for the Constitution.
Political analyst Nerima Wako was part of the protest. She recalls being advised by a police officer to avoid crowded places.
It was like, wasichana hamfai kwa hapa nje hivi. Be careful. Kuna magunza hapa na wako na visu, and he was just like, msiende down hivi. Like he was warning us, don't go past Koja, don't go down in that direction, because if something happens to you, we won't be able to help you. He was like, just stay up on this side, but it's really, really dangerous. So by the time women are coming out on the streets, especially at that level of violence, there's that sense of fear of being attacked. And then secondly, you already appear the minority, you're the minority. All of a sudden, compared to June 25th, where it almost felt even in terms of the number of women and men, after that, it was just more men. There was just like an influx of men. So you already felt like you are this small minority. See, there's a decline, especially of young women entering politics. What I'm concerned about is the kind of women who are in politics right now. You almost have to have this, not even Iron Lady anymore, you're almost crazy to a level where people don't want to mess with you anymore. You're unpredictable. Some of them branded themselves as being these party animals, these wild women, which they're intelligent. Like, why do you have to portray this image of yourself to survive in politics? And it makes it harder for young women to join, because they're like, if that's what I have to keep up with, if that's what I have to portray, then, politics step aside.
As the dust settles on the nation after a season of turbulence, tension still hangs in the air. As the rains washed away the stinging air of tear gas and the sound of guns fell silent, the wind of change blows. The future is here. We all feel it in the air. As families that lost their loved ones in the protests mourn, a nation waits for answers. And as history of this nation flips into a new chapter, the story of protests of 2024 is hereby written in blood, sweat, and tears. As names of those who stood on the forefront of calls for change and justice shall be called, women will stand tall, for they were strong, unapologetic, and yes, women of steel. Agutu Rosa, KTN.
Time for a break. When we come back, Harambee Starlets coach explains why the